So I hope you can see the slideshow.
Yes, we can. It's perfect.
So as you know, I am Mili Saha. I'm basically from Bangladesh, although I'm in Australia now. I'm doing my PhD here, but I was studying my master's at YSE in 2017. And this is the time here. Now it's 2:30 a.m. And yesterday when I was presenting my research, it was 4:30 a.m.
Oh, yeah. So
yeah, I don't want to miss this event, at least because every year I try to submit something or to present. So this year I do have some PhD study pressure, but still these were some old studies I was doing during COVID-19 period, and I submitted and got accepted and doing now. But these are not my PhD work. Anyway, the interesting part is that when I was doing master's at YSE, in 2017, I was working on a term paper like learners' roles in online learning. Then online learning was not so, widely used, but it was quite concentrated in North America, particularly. And my professor was quite interested in my proposal, like learner roles in online learning, but who knew that after 2 years this will be a mainstream pedagogic practice. And I was quite interested in looking at the teachers' issues or learners' roles in online learning when it was really going on throughout the world. So my today's presentation is on like language teachers' professional stress and emotions in online teaching. And the agenda includes, introductions, a bit of theories and the methods that I used, the results I got, and the conclusion. So to introduce my study, I would just like to look at some recent relevant literature. Like teaching is always and often a highly stressful profession, as we all know, because we are teaching, and a language teacher is triggered by some more unique challenges than others when you are teaching a second language. But teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic involved several more new stressors, and including professional well-being issues for language teachers. And, this was quite interesting while I was talking to some teachers in Bangladesh. Like I was doing many researches like on teacher boredom and the disadvantages in online teaching and learning, and particularly for the rural teachers and rural students. So I was just talking to them. It was like something like we are interacting and exchanging ideas, sharing feelings and emotions. But later I found McIntyre et al. Had a theoretical ground on those psychological issues, and I turned it to a research and analyzed those data. So it is really a coincidental research. So teacher stress impact students. I came to know that disruptive behaviors and lower academic achievement. But in COVID-19 period, I'm sure it was not students' behavior that was impacted by teacher stress. Rather, teacher stress was generated in students' irresponsiveness or non-participation inside online classroom. And so my study analyzes 3 types of pedagogic stressors regarding classroom management, individual characteristics, and school policies and practices that EFL or ESL teachers in Bangladesh experienced while they were teaching online. So the theory that supports the study is all about teacher stress, and which has really 3 aspects. So one is like a classroom management that's connected to students' behaviors or students' participation. And the other aspect was on like teachers' coping skills and mindset or tendency to cope with the barriers that they have or the disadvantages situation. And the third aspect was on schools management or practice or policies that is really handled by school leaders or education managers. So the theory shows like teachers should be trained to cope with some disadvantaged situations, and definitely they need some training to cope in this stress and teaching stress and other stress, student-related stress and management-related stress. But teacher stress really create burnout or teacher attrition, as we know. But students' behavior, teachers will be training students to do that task on time, or to get the learning objective or achievement. So in these 3 aspects, teacher stress is called the emotional and cognitive or psychological experience when environmental demands exceed an individual's resources to adapt. They do have some interpersonal skills or personal attitude to cope with the stress that they experience any context, including education, but still sometimes there are some special needs, and that's what we are focusing on right now. So teacher stress refers to their psychological reaction to environmental conditions that they cannot control and that produce a variety of effects, including physical arousal or threats to well-being. So the 3C theory that informed this study talks about coping, competence, and context, where teacher feel and cope with the text, their stress. So coping is an individual's attempt to manage the environmental demands that exceed their resources to adapt. So they cannot manage it with their personal skills. So they need some other help and they seek the emotional support from the environment. So this coping pathway includes the teacher's characteristics, including mindset, interpersonal qualities, and coping skills that contribute directly to stress responses. So these coping skills might be of two types. So one is cognitive coping and the other one is behavioral coping. So cognitive coping really relates emotion-focused strategies that they use to reinterpret or understand the stressors that is created in online teaching. And behavioral coping, as the teachers reported to me, like was problem-focused strategies, that how they deal with the problems and how they interpret the problems in a different way from different perspective, being an online teacher. And competence refers to the link between stress and classroom practices, particularly teacher classroom management skills. And in this pathway, stress directly affects the teacher's practice, including their interactions patterns with students, which directly affects students' behaviors and teacher stress level in turn at the same time. And the context pathway highlights school and system policies and practices that contribute to teacher stress. School level practices, including administrative support or administrative incorporation or systematic policies such as standardized testing or influence contextual stressors that impact teacher stress, burnout, or attrition. So drawing on this theory, this 3C theory of teacher stress, my study examines 5 Bangladeshi English teacher stressors or emotional encounters in online teaching that affected their professional well-being during COVID-19. So I was talking to 3 types of teachers, like who are teaching at rural schools, urban schools, and both at urban universities. So the research questions include, what were Bangladeshi English language teachers' perceived stresses and coping competence and the context of online teaching during pandemic, and how did these stressors affect their professional well-being? So recently I was talking to the participants once again, and I asked them, what about your stress right now? They say, like, still, if we go online for some reasons, for some, emergency situations or like for emergency solutions, we do have that stress because learners are not participating. When they are online, they really do not act as the way they do in face-to-face classes, are not that responsive, not responsible. So my study on learners' roles in online teaching is really growing a bit, day by day. So I'm waiting to get it done. The methodology that I used for the study was, the study type is qualitative case study, and the participants, as you know, 5 Bangladeshi English teachers working at school, college, and university. And semi-structured online interviews were done via Zoom applications, and data were analyzed using thematic and content analysis thematically. And the framework was like coping, competence, and context. So to look at the findings, the way to regarding how did these teachers cope with their stress that related to students' irresponsiveness and student factors. So first teachers said no students joined while I was waiting for a long time, like in the rural areas, and they do not take it seriously since it is not a mainstream pedagogic pattern. So I see it from a different perspective, like teachers' consideration. And this is just an emergency solution. It is nothing as a pedagogy, and I do not feel like a teacher here as I would do in face-to-face classes. So it has varied limitations, including student factors. I am never satisfied as a teacher or administrator while working online. Presence has a big role to play in academic relationships and teaching learning, which I miss. And the important issue is here, the presence and the physical connections between teachers, students, and students inside the classroom that is really vibrant and creates the learning environment, which was absent in online. And someone is waiting here. And second teacher said, I have to talk much more online than the normal classes. It has been a struggle. Connecting students is challenging, and it turned out to be a pain, and I started to dislike the system. Sometimes I have to force them to talk and call them by their names to make them active, which is usually not needed offline, and that is an extra stressor. Definitely, I believe everyone will be agreeing with me, because this thing I experienced at universities also. Like when students are not responding, we have to repeat the things and we have to call them by names so they respond and we make them active. And the third teacher told, I feel exhausted at every second class. Moreover, when students do not respond properly, I feel like not conducting the class. Why should I? It's not needed because they don't want it. And sometimes I do not feel like a teacher. So these are all regarding students' irresponsiveness and non-participation, actually. It was regarding students' behavior, and that was teachers' coping skills. Teachers had consideration. They were thinking from different perspectives, so they cope with this. But still, finally, it couldn't come out really. So the context-related challenges that teachers had was like loud noise and repetition have been annoying, and headphone use is unhealthy. I have to repeat things, which is irritating, and multiple hour-long classes made the teaching quality awfully bad or inconsistent. They were prepared, but still, I mean, we had to repeat it. When students are not responding, definitely we have to talk twice. One thing we have to say twice so that they respond, or they at least come back to the classroom. But fourth teacher says, using video camera in exams is stressful since I do not share all the questions at a time, and I had to wait for a long time over there so they can write the same question at the same time, and I have to be engaged throughout the class, whether they talk or not. Low network is annoying, which forces me to reschedule classes, and this is nerve-wracking. So in Bangladesh, it was another issue like interrupted network, and definitely it could take testing your patience, like how far you wait for getting the line back or getting the students back. And one important thing is that teachers are talking about students' parents' involvement in online teaching and learning, so that the supervision is in their hand. Teachers cannot control the class, so parents had to get the students to be active inside the classroom. And fifth teacher said another stress is the extra administrative workload imposed on teacher. And teachers have too many classes, so we have to do many administrative tasks, making routine, filing or publishing news bulletins or reading proof, etc. So many responsibilities badly impact my teaching competence and qualities, and I didn't have enough time to research. So regarding 3Cs, so we're talking about coping and context, and about competence. And that was interesting. Like one teacher said, the best thing is conducting classes anytime at our convenience from home. And definitely I had much time to prepare since I didn't need to travel. Using internet was interesting because in rural area, they cannot do it in face-to-face classroom. So he could improve technology-enhanced language learning. But when students are not there, I have to cancel the class and end up with some homework from the text for the next class, as we usually do in face-to-face classroom. So once again, students' non-participation, but in rural area, it was much challenging because they could not have managed money for buying data or could not manage devices. I know there was some mishap, like some students attempted to suicide because they could not attend the online schools. And these things happened, and this was a reality. So that was a competence issue, like teachers' competence could not develop over days because they could not practice it. The way they were learning from technology, they could not practice it. They could not make it happen inside the classroom. The other teachers said getting the slides ready is advantage. I'm doing my job, but I'm really not teaching here because I don't feel like to be a teacher here. I do not enjoy the teacher identity here, and I'm not so much a teacher now. How much I teach, that really doesn't matter. Online learner roles are important. If they do not participate, it doesn't work. But when they respond, using technology can make a learning enjoyable, and I cannot do it offline. And fifth teacher said, I feel identity crisis. Most of the students do not attend classes and do not know me, and there is less personal communication, and daily professional development has been seriously affected, and I'm losing my English speaking fluency and missing continuous learning from critical incidents. So that was quite interesting, that learning from critical incidents, because they reflect on everyday experiences they get from students, like students' activities, participation, non-participation. But in online, definitely, as I was experiencing, students had low participation and students were quite passive. They're like enjoying something, seeing something, and even if you give them activities to be engaged in the classroom, they were not responding because they were busy with family, siblings, like other things, because the home was not, I mean, most of the students could not make it an educative environment, and they were taking it not taking seriously. At least in our context, we environment, I hope you have similar experiences too. So to wrap up the research findings, as it demonstrates how participating teachers' emotional challenges in coping competence and context affected their teaching practices and professional satisfaction. Some people are also suffering from identity crisis. I mean, they didn't want to be teachers. 3 of my students left teaching during COVID-19 period, and luckily they got back after COVID-19, and conducting classes often looked unnecessary with mostly inactive students, which was exhausting. They said, why should I teach? They don't want to be taught. But the interesting thing is they utilized both approach and avoidance strategies to cope with this stress. Like they accepted the situation, they seek emotional support, and they had positive refraining, like they were planning teaching, and they have active coping strategies like calling them by names, and they use instrumental support regarding the internet and the website and the other technological tools. But they had also avoidance strategies because they had disengagement in the classroom. They withdrew the class, canceled the class, and they had self-destruction like repeating and loud noises. So these things really happen and going on, but the conclusion calls for addressing, and basing on these results, the conclusion calls for addressing both teachers and students' well-being needs that we usually do not think in face-to-face classroom. We think we manage it. Both parties manage it, but definitely there are some issues of well-being needs while designing an emergency or regular pedagogic solutions. And they also need training in stress management in such situations. I guess this is not only limited to COVID-19 or emergency pedagogic situation. Definitely, this should be practiced during the common normal period and time when you teach. And that's all from me today. And these are the references that I used for my presentation. Thank you everyone for hearing me. If you have any questions.